And welcome back to episode number 20 of Raise the Banner podcast. We got a little new platform here that we're testing out. Hopefully, this goes nice and smooth here. But as usual, I'm one of your three co hosts, Matt Couture, here with JR Mott and Benny Ballgame Dearth. Benny Ballgame, how are you doing?
I'm good. I have officially flipped the page. Got the old Tom Brady jersey, old school, not old school, I guess. Old school would be like '90s starter jersey from the blue Drew Bledsoe days. Uh, but yeah, I've officially flipped the script. It's Patriots offseason. Uh, Sad that we're at three of the last 4 years our offseason starts before Wild Card weekend, but that's the way it goes sometimes. But ready to turn the page and get fired up for hopefully a reworked direction and a new Patriots team moving forward.
All right, JR, how are you, man?
Not too bad, man. Just like Ben said, I'm a little bit bummed their season ended the way it did. At the beginning of the year, we all thought that this was a team that could potentially make the playoffs or at least, win more games than last year. But just ready to move forward with going into the new league year and just seeing what happens with this team, whether Bill Belichick ends up leaving, gets traded, or just retires, or he stays and we rework the whole entire front office and, see what happens with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where we're going to start. Obviously we got through Black Monday in the NFL. There were firings in Atlanta, Washington. Was there anywhere else head coaches on Monday? I know, LA Chargers are already, Raiders are already.
Just Arthur Smith and
Yeah,
Frank,
I think it was just Atlanta and Washington.
Yeah, Rivera
so
and
we got through Black Monday without any news. Obviously, now this is Tuesday evening, and we still have no news. Tommy Curran reported that they did meet yesterday, and that is Belichick and Kraft, and presumably also Jonathan Kraft. They're supposedly meeting, another one or two times. I would guess today, and then maybe tomorrow. The fact that there is no news today tells me maybe they're meeting again. We did hear from Belichick Monday after the game. He kind of laid his stance down in an interesting way. He kind of put his foot and said, well, I'm under contract. That kind of told people to him saying that he's going to put it on Robert Kraft, whether, if he's not going to make the decision for Robert Kraft. If Kraft will have him back, he will be back, and it's going to be Kraft's decision to either keep him or fire him. Also to that, he kind of insinuated the idea that he could be open to relinquishing GM duties. Do we know if that's going to certainly be the case if he is? We may never find out. I don't know. We'll see. It depends how things play out. But as a whole, what are you guys' updated thoughts? I think I kind of know your answers, but we can kind of, go around one more time of this specific question. And I'll start with you, Ben. Should the New England Patriots fire Bill Belichick?
So, should they? I don't know if should is the right question. I mean, my stance on this has changed a little bit. I know we talk at length off the record, but probably as of maybe like a week or two ago, I was of the opinion didn't want him back, was ready to move on, and that was predicated on the idea that I didn't really believe that he would ever want to stay on as just the coach and relinquish GM duties to, fill in the blank guy who would have the final say. Maybe Bill's in the draft room. I mean, all the coaches are in the draft room, right? But he has a voice. He has an opinion that holds water, and he's part of that collaborative decision making. I didn't think that would ever be something he'd want to do. He's almost 72 years old, and at this stage in his life, why would he take a pay cut and lose a significant part of his job and his day-to-day operations just to stay here? Because I kind of figured, somebody else would be willing to offer him the same type of deal he had here. Maybe not monetarily speaking, but like, GM control, head coach type of deal. Teams are desperate. Teams make silly, crazy decisions all the time. But lately, I would say my preference is that he does give up that job, that role as the GM, to somebody else. And I'm sure we'll get into, who we want, who do we think it might be, how the fit would work depending on who it is, if Bill stays versus if Bill goes. If he really is willing to do that, my preference is that he stays on as head coach and somebody else is the GM making final personnel and football ops decisions. So I don't think they should. And I base that now on, like, when you take a look around the NFL, obviously good coaches don't oftentimes, and I know, you have a situation like Vrabel gets let go today. It's very, very rare that coaches who are respected within their organization, who at least are, at a bare minimum treading water, you don't see those coaches get fired very often. Like, I know that the Titans struggled the last 2 years, but Vrabel's arguably a top 5 coach in the NFL. It's debatable. He's very well respected. Players love him. Players play hard for him. But those types of coaches don't come along very often. You kind of have to, discover whether or not, somebody you hire, whether or not that's actually a guy that can become a good coach. Having said that, it's hard to look at the available options and say that Bill is worse. Like, you're not going to find somebody better than Bill to coach this team. So that's my opinion. There's something to be said about finding like the next McVay or Shanahan, somebody of that ilk, to go along with a young, dynamic quarterback, theoretically, if they draft one. But I think that they're not better off with somebody else. They're not necessarily better off by getting rid of Bill and finding the next guy, because there's still a relative unknown. Like, what you're getting with Bill. The players respect him. The players respond to him. They play for him. He's just, his GM and staff and personal decisions have kind of fallen off a little bit. So should they? No. I don't. I would say there's probably I would say a 55 to 60% chance he's gone. That's just my gut. It's not based on anything. That's just my gut feeling. But we'll see. Should they? No. But I kind of expect that ultimately it'll end up being that they move on from Bill.
Fair, JR. How about you, man?
All right. So we're talking about like him relinquishing and everything like that. And you brought up the quote. I'm going to read the full quote because a lot of people are saying, oh, he said he's going to relinquish duties. If people listen to the full entire way he said it, this is what he says. Zach Cox from Nesson tweeted out, Belichick's full quote on this. Look, for whatever we decide collectively as an organization is the best thing to help our football team. I have multiple roles in that, and I rely on a lot of people to help me in those responsibilities. Somebody's got to have the final say, and I have it. I rely on a lot of other people to help. Whatever the process is, I'm only part of it. So, yes, at the same, he's saying that, yeah, maybe I do need to step back, and I do need to just hand over personnel decisions and roster building and just the everyday GM duties to another person that's qualified for that. Hopefully that's not Matt Groh. Or he's also trying to, flaunt that, hey, look, one way or another, it's my show. I'm running it. I'm going to have a final say in what happens, if you bring in somebody or not. So do I think he's saying he'll relinquish the duties? Maybe. Do I think he will? I don't think so. I think there will more than likely be a puppet GM if they keep him. I've said this a few times on the timeline. I think there will probably end up being a puppet GM. Or unless he really is being true, saying that he's going to relinquish the duties, he's going to have to actually allow himself to not. Because I know he's been doing this for 24 years, 23 years. He's been running the show. It's going to be hard for him to step back and not be able to, be like, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing as a GM. But it can bring in somebody that has the experience and knows how he is. It could work. I mean,
So
we just said before we went live, he's the best coach ever, and not putting that past him, but I don't know.
so let's say he's open to. He says he will relinquish duties, and that he will. The final say will go to the GM. Now let's be contractually specific. If they hired a new GM and officially stripped Belichick as that say, whether Belichick wants to or not, the GM has the final say. Now, will Belichick work, coherently with that new GM? That's another discussion. But let's say he says he will. Are you keeping Bill Belichick, or are you still moving on altogether?
There's a lot that needs to be done, and there's a lot he needs to, go through and admit and work on before anybody should even think, okay, keep him. He has to be at least admit, yeah, I've really screwed this team over with team building and roster building and personnel, like staffing and everything like that. And he's got to be fine with the fact, hey, I just have to go out there and coach. That's all I have to do. And like I said, I know it's going to be hard for him to not be able to make that decision, but he can't have his stubbornness oh, they drafted this guy. I don't like him. I'm not going to play him. If Kraft is going to keep him, he has to abide by that, or else he can go. It's one way, or it's Kraft's way, or it's the highway. If Kraft says we're bringing in a GM, he has final say, and you're going to do what he says, he's got to obey it. If he doesn't, he's got to go. Because I'm not going to put up with this shit anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he was to relinquish powers and come to the understanding with Kraft, and he sticks around, I would go into the situation a little skeptical, but with the belief that he would honor that. I'm not gonna if he sticks around with a new GM, and even if it's a prior Patriots front office guy, whether it's I think there was a little whispers about Scott Pioli today by Ben Volen, whether it's Dave Ziegler. I know Nick Cesario.
He shut that down immediately.
Today. Yeah, he shut that down today. But if it's Ziegler or Pioli or Wolf, whoever it may be, I think I would just go into it maybe a little too optimistic, just an optimistic view that he would work with that guy. I'm not going to go in and say, okay, they hired a new GM and it's not going to work because Bill's going to undermine him. It's going to be hell, and it's just going to be the same thing next year. Because I think either way, even if Belichick was back as GM in full control, which I still think has a small possibility of being the situation, he has to have recognized, and he wouldn't be back as GM unless there is a concrete plan to Kraft that things are changing with the approach to the team. There's no way Belichick's going into that meeting and being I'm either going to stick what I'm doing. I'm just going to stick what I'm doing or fire me. That's not how this is going to work. Going back to what I mentioned online and social media, I think I talked to Ben a little bit about it. I don't think when we talked about what his other options are, right? We've heard about Washington, we've heard about LA Chargers, we've heard about Atlanta, a little bit Carolina. The most one today was it Atlanta that said he's
Atlanta. Supposedly Arthur Blank said he's going to come and he's going to go at him hard if he's available.
All right. Yeah. So Atlanta,
that's their plan, that they want to. They're planning an aggressive pursuit of Bill if it comes to pass that he's available in free
altogether.
Agency.
Yeah. So I'm going to go under the belief, based off of the perceived interest, that he will get an offer to take full control, head coach, GM, completely take over. I'm going to go with that belief. Did Atlanta fire the GM or just the head coach?
No, they're not. They have a GM, but he's not involved in any of this head coaching search. It's Arthur Blank.
Okay, that's interesting. So I don't know. I don't know how that will play out. But either way, I would think, based off the interest, he would get a full control offer or two, or maybe three.
The Panthers.
I still.
So just real quick, just because you brought it up, Terry Fontenot is the general manager of the Atlanta Falcons.
Okay. So I still think a big factor in all this that people kind of put to the side, and like everyone just thinks football and like his mind, his ego, and all this. We have to think of real life. And I know Ben tried to rebuttal this a little bit on social media because he likes to be a jackass to me on X.
It's my job. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Bill Belichick is going to be 72 years old. He's been here for the last 25 years. His kids grew up here. His kids' families are here. His grandkids go to school here. We would assume that Brian and Steve would follow him wherever he goes, which, I would say that's pretty damn confident that would be the scenario.
Brian can. I would do whatever you could to lock up Steve because he's a damn good coach.
I don't see them firing Bill and Steve sticking around. So, I think Belichick, when you put football aside and look at the big picture of it, is, do I really want to start over somewhere else? Is that what I want to do? Do I want to go down to Atlanta and ask both my children to uproot their families and move down to Atlanta, Georgia, and start over down there?
Or go home to D.C.
Yeah, or go to, Washington, or hell, go cross country to L.A. or Carolina, whatever it may be.
They own a family home in Maryland still, so.
Correct. And so, but either way,
if he's going to go anywhere, he'll end up back in D.C. because that's where his family. That's where he's from.
Correct. So, but still, big picture to me, I have a hard time looking past the real life of it, that he's going to say, you know what, uproot your family, come here. He wants to break that record. I think, that's his. I mean, obviously he wants to win a Super Bowl still, but that's his number 2 priority, is he wants that record. But I also think comfort in just 72 years old, starting over with a whole new team, building a whole new coaching staff, building a whole new front office, a whole new ownership that you don't know. You're walking into a whole complete unknown at 72 years old.
He just takes all of his yes men to Atlanta.
I mean, he could, but you're still you got everything new. Do you want to restart that all at 72 years old? I know football's his life, but at 72 years old, I'm hoping I'm retired at 72. But if for whatever reason at 72 years old I'm still going because I love it that much, I'm not going to want to.
You'll still be dog sitting, I imagine.
No, God no. If I'm still dog sitting as a side gig, but it's certainly not going to be.
That's how
I might still be doing real estate. There's no really retiring at
70-year-old Mac. It's over.
You really don't retire in real estate.
No, that'll be your retirement. You'll be a dog walker
unless you're a real estate mogul.
That's true. Well,
even if you're a mogul, you
could be the future Warren Buffett.
Yeah. You can run even if you're highly successful in real estate, you could create a team and do very minimal work and still rake in the dough. Be an advisor, a head of a team essentially, and just push everything off to people underneath you.
Yeah.
But anyways,
we digress.
Back to the original topic. I this morning before Vrabel was fired, I kind of said, I think the best path would be to try to get a situation where they bring in someone else to run the front office and Belichick stays. If that's the path, I'm okay with it, because I do believe Bill Belichick is still a really good coach. With that said, as I think Ben mentioned, Mike Vrabel was fired in Tennessee. We didn't know what was going to happen. We knew they were meeting. We didn't know if they were going to stick around, if they were going to try to trade him. Ultimately, he got fired. He's free to go. He's free to be hired anywhere right now. What are your overall thoughts on Mike Vrabel? And, if Belichick is fired, the conceivably two most likely candidates would be Mike Vrabel and Gerard Mayo. What are your thoughts on them, and if who you like more, and if you'd be okay with that hire?
So,
Go first, Ben.
trying to collect my thoughts here. So, I would say like Vrabel over Mayo for me. Reason being is, and I touched on this before. He's well respected. He's one of the better head coaches in the NFL. He's had success in Tennessee. He's won multiple playoff games. Got to an AFC Championship game 3 or 4 years ago. I think that was the year they lost to Kansas City when Kansas City won their first ring, if I'm not mistaken. About timing on that might be off. I forget if that was the year I forget what year that was. It was either the year they won or the following year when they lost to Tampa. But he's obviously he's got success. Players respond to him. He's still relatively young. I think he's 49. So, I would him over Gerard Mayo. Yes. My personal preference. Vrabel would probably be my number 2 choice overall. Especially if they're going to go with a young quarterback. The idea of finding a younger offensive-minded guy that can, gel and grow with the young quarterback. I know it doesn't necessarily have to be the offensive guy. DeMeco Ryans did it in Houston this year. I don't know what their staff looks like, but I know he's got a pretty good staff around him to help with the younger guys with Stroud and Collins and Dell. But Vrabel as a coach, I don't know. Again, those types of coaches don't come around very often, especially at this time in their career. So I think, he becomes, I don't want to say the easy choice, but something I heard today from Greg Bedard, kind of like I thought about it and I was like, that makes total sense. You kind of have to look at it. We should look at it from the lens of the crafts, right? So Robert and Jonathan are not big risk takers with their decisions, right? So you look at Mike Vrabel and say, good coach, successful, players respond to him. But in terms of you have to look at it. What do they want to do? They want to create a seamless transition, as seamless a transition as possible. And Vrabel fits that billing because he played here. He's familiar with the organization. You do get a little bit of, he's not like a Bill Belichick guy. Like he played for Bill, but he was not part of Bill's coaching tree, which is like Mayo is. So he's familiar with the organization. And I'm not saying that Mayo doesn't have these things. I just think that because Vrabel's established as a head coach, outside of the coaching acumen of the two guys, out of the career acumen, right? I don't think there was any crossover between Vrabel and Mayo. I think Vrabel was gone like a year before Mayo got here, but obviously they both played for Bill. I don't think Mayo won a Super Bowl. I don't think
Mayo and Vrabel played together.
What year? Was it his rookie year?
Oh, no. Sorry.
When was Mayo drafted? 08 or 2010?
Sorry, I was thinking of Nikovich.
Mayo was 07, I think.
Then they did. Vrabel was here through 2008.
So Gerard, real quick, I'm just going to look it up. So Gerard Mayo is a year older than, so Gerard Mayo was the 10th overall pick in 08.
And Vrabel played here through 08.
Mike Vrabel, that was his last year, was the 2008 season.
Yeah, he played 2. He went 09 and 10 in KC.
01, that's right, 01 to 08. So 1 year of crossover, right? But they both played here. Vrabel was part of the first dynasty run, if you want to call it that. So I just think that between the two guys, they both played under Bill, but Vrabel's established himself as a good coach in this league, whereas Mayo's, sure, is he a good, inside linebackers coach? I'm sure he is, but you don't know how he would run a team. Vrabel's done it and he's succeeded at it. It was kind of up and down. They crashed and burned at the end of the 2022 season. They were 7-3, lost their last 7, and I think they went 6-11 this year. So, kind of a disappointing end to that tenure. But like Vrabel's done it, so like I would prefer him over Mayo in a vacuum. But big picture, Vrabel wouldn't be my number one choice. But if it came down to who do I want, Vrabel or Mayo, I would take Vrabel.
Fair. JR, where do you stand on this whole discussion?
So I had technical difficulties a few minutes ago. Sorry about that. Because of Florida, we're having horrible storms right now, and our internet's going back and forth. So if it's between Vrabel and Mayo, I would much rather have Gerard Mayo. Partially just because the fact that Gerard Mayo is a highly analytical guy from everything you've read, everything you've heard, and like what reporters have said, like he's very in touch with the modern game of football, that being defense and offense. Like I said, analytics run the league now. And if he's big into that, I could see him being a big factor of potentially building a better offense. Obviously, he's going to have to work hand in hand with the GM, and whether that GM be Scott Pioli, my number one candidate is Alec Hallaby from the Eagles. Whether it be anybody, I think he'll have a more modern approach to roster building when it comes to the offense. We already know how he is with the defense. Everybody on defense says he's the most lovable coach in the room, and everybody loves playing for him. So,
he was like that as a player too. But
yeah,
he bonded with everybody he played with when he was here.
I remember Rob Ninkovich called him the smartest man in football, which was crazy.
I think he and I say this sillily, I think he because he went to Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, but I think he got a real degree. He wasn't one of those guys like Richard Sherman, for example. Richard Sherman went to Stanford, so and got a real degree. He wasn't one of those.
Sherman's a very smart man.
Oh yeah, so he's not one of those guys that was he's not like one of these bumbling buffoons who went to whatever college and graduated with a degree in communications because it was just an easy way to get a degree because they wanted to play football. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think Mayo's incredibly intelligent.
Well, he worked in the medical field after he got out of football. Like when he retired, he went working into the medical field, and then I forget what podcast I was listening to. I think it was Up and Adams with Kay Adams. She was saying how he got tired of it and just missed football. So that's when he came back. Bill gave him a job, and here he is. He's a head coaching candidate. I would prefer an offensive head coach. I've said that many times. But if we're going to go in-house, I'd rather have Mayo.
Fair. I think for me, and this will be my quick little rant that I was mentioning. I'm sick and tired that at this point the reputation around Belichick is that almost like that he's a bad coach, and that he the disciples of him has tarnished the reputation that anybody that he has touched, whether that's a former player or a former coach, shouldn't be considered because it's just going to be this assumption that he is the same person. That is driving me absolutely nuts in these discussions. I keep saying, oh, you can't hire Gerard Mayo because he's just a JV version of Bill Belichick. Says who? Because he coaches under Bill Belichick. Just because he's going to learn some things from Bill Belichick doesn't mean that Gerard Mayo is going to come in and just be like Bill Belichick 2.0 and just fall every step of the way. Like you mentioned, JR, he's a highly analytical person. He connects tremendously with players. He's his own man. It's driving me fucking nuts when I hear people like, oh, we can't have Gerard Mayo. He's just like Belichick. Is that really a bad thing? Bill Belichick, the GM, is the issue. Bill Belichick, his arrogance is a little bit of an issue, but Bill Belichick, the coach, is still damn good. He's still one of, if not the best coach in football.
it would depend on what you want, because there are people out there who they want a completely different style of how the football operation is run, down to they don't want somebody who, no, is Gerard Mayo going to be Bill Belichick 2.0? No, but coaches tend to, in some degree, emulate the person they learned under. So there are going to be certain similarities between how Gerard would run a team compared to how Mayo would run. How Bill ran a team. And I think that's just the nature of, they're both in the building. You're watching how Bill runs a team, and Matt, you and I coached together for a couple of years, different sport, but when you're learning under somebody else, like, you pick up certain things, you say, like, I like this, I don't like that, and that's how you become your own person. But you do tend to, you pick up on certain things and you emulate that from somebody that you learn from. So I think I know what you're saying, and I agree with I agree with the notion that it shouldn't be, well, Gerard Mayo should be written off altogether because he's going to just be, 75% of what we had under Bill Belichick for 24 years. What I will say, and I won't disagree with somebody who wants this, is I can understand why somebody would want a complete break from what Bill brings to the table and what his coaches historically have done when they've moved on to other organizations in different roles. I can understand the
That's
desire
why
to
I
want
understand,
to
like,
change that.
I understand, like, the McDonald's, McDaniels, and, like, the Patricia and the Judge. Like, I get that thought, and it's not that I have, like, a big issue with anyone wanting, like, a fresh overhaul. Like, there are some names I really like outside, the realm of Patriots former players and coaches and all that. What just drives me nuts is Gerard Mayo and I would say Mike Vrabel. People at least, like, can make up bullshit excuses about his time in Tennessee. That's a whole nother topic. That team is drained of talent. Like, that's why they've gone down. The GM, like, you know what I mean? But that's a whole different discussion.
The whole entire offense died when AJ Brown got traded.
Well, not only that, like, their defense have lost
They've fallen
multiple,
apart.
yeah, big talents. With Gerard Mayo, there's nothing that anyone has explained to me of why he wouldn't be a good head coach. Every argument against Gerard Mayo
He's
is
another Belichick guy.
solely just a made up theory that he is going to be just like Belichick, which goes back to what we've kind of all agreed on. Bill Belichick's a great football coach. That hasn't changed. He's still a great coach. If Bill Belichick had the roster of the Dallas Cowboys, they may go undefeated. He's still a great coach.
Imagine if he had the Niners.
He just sucks as a GM right now. He has made too many mistakes over the years, and it's derailed the roster, and the offense just has such minimal talent in every aspect. The only thing that's been, like, decent about the Patriots offense is their run game, because Mondre Stevenson was pretty good. That's the only thing that's been decent in terms of talent. Their best wide receiver is Devontae Parker and Kendrick Bourne. That's not good.
Breaking news: the Chicago Cubs signed Shota Imanaga.
There we go. We'll get to that.
I just thought I'd let you know. So
yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah, it just drives me nuts that, like, the argument against Mayo is, well, he'll just be another Belichick. That you're just making up. It's not even a real argument. You're just making up an argument. It's not an actual excuse against him. In terms of Vrabel specifically, I was leaning. If Belichick is fired, I wanted Mayo. I think Mayo is going to be a really good coach. What you mentioned, Ben, is kind of like, I think it was, I don't know, I forget his name. He's a reporter for, like, NCSN or whatever. Taylor or something for the Patriots. he mentioned take apart like the head coaching experience of Vrabel. What do you like more about Vrabel than Mayo? And honestly, I don't know if there's anything specific because I think they're very similar coaches in terms of approach, personality, the demand for respect, the being
Yeah,
able to connect
Vrabel.
with
I mean,
players.
I get the impression, and maybe it's just because he's been more in the limelight because he's a head coach, not a pseudo defensive coordinator, linebackers coach. Vrabel seems to be more of a personality, whereas Mayo seems to just kind of like quietly go about his day. He doesn't, he's not a like Mayo doesn't strike me as a rah kind of coach.
Vrabel's a little more vocal.
Yeah, Vrabel's like he's like loud is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, he's a
With
little bit
Vrabel
more loud than Mayo.
like Mayo's like not that Vrabel doesn't have the confidence, but Mayo's like he's got a quiet confidence. He walks with he's got a like you can see like he carries himself. They carry themselves similarly.
Yeah.
Mayo just does it with a little more that like quiet like swagger, quiet confidence.
Part
Whereas
of it is
Vrabel's the guy that'll get in your face and tell you like get your shit together and be a better player.
Well, part of the
Whereas
issue
Mayo
is
may not do that.
He's working under Belichick. So, has there ever really been a coach during Belichick's days that you were like, this guy is maybe other than maybe Bill O'Brien, during his meltdowns with Tom Brady.
So
like there really hasn't been that many coaches that have been
so
similar.
I'll say it only like it definitely has been a while. Like Romeo Crennel was a little bit like that as a D coordinator. He was a little bit more of a high energy guy. Charlie Weiss sort of, but he was never like a get in your face. He was more of a, you'd see him like, we all talk about like, when the Patriots do something good, what's Bill doing on the sidelines? And it looks like he's scowling because he's unhappy with how they just scored a touchdown. Charlie Weiss was he would get excited, like most coaches do when something good happens, whereas Bill's like, he's just sitting there like, he's
Bill's seen it all. So
basically,
but like even still, right? Like,
but
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Basically, what I'm saying is like I think that like if when Mayo gets a head coaching job and it's his job, we'll see a little more of like who he really is, and you won't like. I still don't think he'll be like to Vrabel's level, but I think you'll see more of his personality come out because it's his gig.
Oh, I think if a ref gets a call wrong or something like that, you just know how Mayo was as a player. He might explode.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what it really comes down to with them. Is I went on my rant. I just think it's just this whole Belichick reputation has gone so out of hand.
Well, I think it's recency bias is the issue. Is Bill's staff and personnel decisions and player decisions have been heightened, right? Bill, and forgive me for how I'm going to word this. Bill got away with minor failures when Brady was here because so let me reword it this way. The margin for error with his football operation decisions when it came to the roster was much bigger when Brady was here for obvious reasons, right? Like Brady covered up for a lot of things. There was a period of time kind of like in that, was it a 10-year window when they went, it was 10 years in between rings 3 and 4, 10 or 11, whatever it was.
I
think it was 10. And so
4 to 14.
Yeah. So like in that 10-year window, one of the bigger issues that plagued the Patriots was their lack of consistent offensive line play. And yeah, they struggled. They only went to 2 Super Bowls in between rings 3 and 4. And the reason they really couldn't get over the hump was because of the O-line, but they were still pushing for Super Bowls because Brady helps overcome certain shortcomings. So I think that the fuel for that narrative is the last 4 years, those offensive, like the margin for error is so much smaller. And because his struggles exist almost exclusively on the offensive side of the ball, with the exception of the offensive line, because I think that's one of the sweet spots. That's fueling that narrative because they don't like the fact that Bill can't draft on offense or doesn't prioritize certain offensive positions like modern day coaches do. I mean, that's really what's fueling that narrative.
Yes, and I get it. I just think it's gotten so far out of hand that it's just starting to really irritate me.
Yeah, because what's getting lost in it is what happened between 2001 and 2019. Like that's kind of like people kind of forget that, and I understand the reason behind it because there's the phrase "What have you done for me lately?" And that's really what is causing people to get up in arms. And again, we touched on it before. I understand why people would want a clean break because they don't want somebody who's anything like Bill. They just want a complete refresh, you know. And I get the desire for that. It's just to your point, I think it goes too far when they go, I want the clean break from Bill because, Bill sucked for 4 years and I don't want somebody who comes out of that tree.
Yeah, that's what I get if you want a clean break. It really just like if I hear one more person say Gerard Mayo's too much like Bill Belichick, I don't want him. I'm gonna lose my goddamn mind. That's not a reason. No one has told me Gerard Mayo's not a good coach. The idea if you fire Bill Belichick, and I want to make this kind of clear too. If Robert Kraft fires Bill Belichick, it's not because he wants to upgrade at head coach. Like that's not the reason why he would be fired.
No, he would be fired for the same reason that Vrabel and Tennessee parted ways, just for different reasons. They just won't be able to. It will be because they didn't come to a common ground for the next, call it the next 5 years, because that's probably Bill Belichick's shelf life
it will be
somewhere between 3 and 5 years.
It will be he got fired because of his GM duties, and he maybe wasn't willing to relinquish it, or just like the big picture, like Robert Kraft's ready to move on. Like it's a new era. He just wants something a little different. And even if it's just a little different and it's like Mike Vrabel or Gerard Mayo, it would still be a different era of Patriots football. So it's just driving me through a wall, like on Twitter, on X, listening to people tell me that, Gerard Mayo can't be there because he's just like Bill Belichick. The goal of your next head coach will be to hire a good coach. That's the goal. So if you think Gerard Mayo is a good coach, then hire him. If you think Mike Vrabel is a good coach, then hire him. I get if you want to go offensively. I know, we've talked about that. There's like Slowick in Houston. There's Canales in
Tampa.
Canales? Is that his name?
Yeah, Dan Canales,
yeah. In Tampa. There's Ben Johnson in Detroit. I'm perfectly fine with exploring those options too. It's not like I'm 100% dead set. It can only be these two guys. I'm just sick and tired of the whole notion that you can't hire Vrabel or Belichick because Vrabel didn't even learn. Vrabel didn't even coach under Bill Belichick, so I don't want to hear that.
He worked with Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, well, so you don't hire Mike Vrabel because he played for Bill Belichick. What is this? 16 years ago? Like, what are we doing?
Here's my thing. The reason why I want to go offensive is because you just look at the way the modern NFL is shifting. You see the track record of how the NFL is working. The defensive head coaches are starting to disappear, or they're going back to becoming just defensive coordinators. And you're seeing like the output of massive offenses being built by these offensive head coaches, like Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan. Like, we have to trace it all back to Kyle Shanahan's dad. Like, he is the godfather and the pioneer of what this modern NFL offense has become. And if you look at just the way the NFL was when Belichick took over with the Patriots compared to how the NFL is now, with maybe the end of his tenure, it was a defensive league. It was a defensive league all the way up until like the mid-2010s when everybody started running the West Coast offense system.
Yeah.
And that became popular.
I get that. Like, I 100% understand the offensive side of the ball, but, let's kind of shift that gear into a question for you, JR. If it is Mayo or Vrabel, who is your top OC target?
Zach Robinson.
2 thumbs up on that name.
Zach Robinson from the Rams. And if it's not him,
Zach Robinson from the Rams.
if it's not him and Dave Canales doesn't get a head coaching job, bring that motherfucker to New England.
Yeah, how much is Dave Canales gonna make a lateral move?
Well, it depends. If Belichick goes somewhere, there's one job taken. If Ben Johnson gets hired, there's a job or there's a spot taken. If Vrabel gets hired, there's a spot taken.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, like, why would Canales make a lateral move? Why wouldn't he just stay in Tampa?
It depends. Are they going to keep Baker or not?
I don't know, but I don't know. I feel like it would be tough.
Maybe.
I mean, maybe if Tampa like is resetting and get rid of Mike Evans and stuff, but
maybe if
I struggle to see why he would leave for a lateral job.
Maybe,
but I like Zach Robinson.
Well, the only thing I'm saying is with Dave Canales is maybe the chance of getting Caleb Williams or Drake May or Jaden Daniels really entices him.
Maybe. I'm not going to rule it out because, I mean, he's only been there for 1 year. It's not like he's, like, fully committed to Tampa.
But Zach Robinson would be my number one choice. That man, oh, my God.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned specific names online that have connection through Vrabel. Obviously, Bill O'Brien does, so he could seemingly just stay. And I think he would. If he's not going to get a head coaching job, which...
I love Billy O. I hope he does stay.
I don't really think, I mean, maybe unless he went back to college, I don't think a head coaching job in the NFL is going to be available.
There's not many coaching jobs open right now.
Yeah, if there's Mayo or Vrabel, I could see Billy O sitting there. If it's Vrabel and Mayo, I could see maybe McDaniels going there, but I mean, more than likely McDaniels would follow Belichick.
No, that's a hard no for me. Keep that Earhart Perkins bullshit out of this system again.
I'm just talking about options. So obviously there's Arthur Smith who coached under.
No thanks.
No,
Vrabel,
thank you. Keep that Looney Tune looking motherfucker
There's
away.
Tim Kelly, who is the current, I guess, is the Titans OC right now. He could obviously follow.
Who's the Niners passing game coordinator right now?
Is it Kubiak?
Is it Clint or is it Clint Kubiak?
I think it's Kubiak, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's see. 49ers coaches.
Because I know both him and his brother work there.
Yeah, I want to say it's Kubiak.
Hold on, I'm going to bring it up. The other thing, too, I know you brought it up, and it's funny that Matt and I were talking about this on Messenger Monday. If Bill Belichick... So, JR, I just want to make sure that you're, like, prepped for this.
Yeah.
If Bill Belichick stays, Josh McDaniels is going to come back to the New England Patriots. Not necessarily as the offensive coordinator, but me personally, I would not be upset if he came back as a offensive assistant / quarterback coach, because he is good at both of those things.
Yeah, I would. I mean, obviously, Ben heard a little through the grapevine and stuff like that. But anyways, he will be back if Belichick's.
JR looks less than thrilled. So real quick,
fire Bill Belichick right now. I don't want McDaniels in that building ever again.
So the offensive coaches. So the quarterback coach is Brian Greasy. Did not know that. The offensive passing game specialist is Clint Kubiak.
Okay, so he's their passing coordinator. Okay.
And then who is there? I don't actually see an offensive coordinator listed.
They don't have an offensive coordinator.
Is there a run game coordinator?
There is, yeah.
So they have their offensive line and run game coordinator is Chris Forrester.
Okay.
Don't know who that is. So I mean, they have a run and a pass game coordinator.
He was number 2 under McDaniel.
Yeah. So
Forrester was.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, big picture to kind of sum this all up. Vrabel is my top option if they move on from Belichick. Then it's a close with Mayo. I would my dream, even if it's only for a year, would be Vrabel as head coach. Mayo, it sticks on as DC. Seemingly, if Mayo doesn't get the job, he might take a different head coaching job if it's offered. I don't know if that's going to be presented to him.
So, how many? So, what did we say? There's only 3 head coaching jobs currently available.
No, 4.
Well, there's
Atlanta, Washington,
Tennessee, Washington. Who else fired their head
Vegas,
coach?
and Chargers. So 5.
Well, the running theory is that Antonio Pierce is going to get promoted from interim to head coach. Forgot about the Chargers. That's right. So
I wouldn't guarantee that. I really wouldn't. I think he may be the front runner ish.
I would say it's more likely than not Antonio Pierce, unless he doesn't want the job. Well, I would say it's more likely than not that Antonio Pierce gets promoted from interim.
There's a few names I would just keep an eye on that if they're interested. And that one would be Jim Harbaugh. If he's interested in the Vegas job, I think they would pivot pretty quickly to him. But anyways, I would say that there's at least 4, maybe 5 jobs opening.
I don't think Mayo fits any of those unless Tennessee wants to go with essentially a Vrabel clone. Because if you want to talk about style, like if they want to keep, if they can find, if they want like Mike Vrabel, but somebody who agrees with the future of the team, like maybe you could get Gerard Mayo over there. I mean, they have a lot to figure out too. Like Derrick Henry's a free agent. They've got a young quarterback. They need other help on the offensive side of the ball. There's just not as many jobs available. I'm sure Mayo will get calls, but because presumably if Bill's gone, you would expect that Steve and Brian, is it Brian?
Yeah, Brian and Steve Belichick.
I forget that Brian's even here because it's like you never hear about him.
Well, he tore his ACL before the season.
Does that mean he can't coach?
He was limited to like office work basically until.
Oh, really? They kept they keep him off the sidelines.
Yeah, because he couldn't. He couldn't walk or anything.
I mean, that's fair. So, but you figure if Bill's gone, so are his kids. So it would make sense if it's like if Vrabel's the head coach, then Mayo gets an actual promotion to defensive coordinator. I would imagine that somebody's probably going to call and want to interview him for a head coaching job.
Yeah, I think the bigger question is if he doesn't get a head coaching job and Belichick went to, let's say, Atlanta, would he fall into Atlanta? I think the more likely scenario is he would stay here if Vrabel was the head coach.
I don't think would he fall into Atlanta to accept in the inside linebackers coach? Like, I don't think he would do that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I think he's not going to get moved to Atlanta to have the same role when he could be the full-time control the defense DC.
Yeah.
Obviously Vrabel's a defensive guy too. So, but Mayo would be calling the plays.
My guess too, and this is based on what transpired last offseason. My guess is if he gets passed over for head coach, if Bill's gone, that Mayo will walk, that he'll leave, that he'll interview, and if he gets a job offer, he's gone, because he withdrew from. Was it Carolina? He was scheduled to do an interview, and then he withdrew his name at the last minute. And then there was a rumor that there was an unnamed team that he was also possibly going to interview with. So you assume that there was some kind of a promise to Mayo.
I think he was interviewing. He was supposed to interview for Cleveland's DC job, maybe.
Yeah, he got a couple of defensive coordinator interviews, but he got at least one head coaching interview request.
Yes, it was Carolina.
And then I think there was a rumor that there was another team, but it never came out because he withdrew his name from the Carolina job, so it never got released of who the second team was. It was pure speculation. But if he's withdrawing his name from a head coaching interview, like, they promised him something. So if they pass him over for head coach, I almost wonder if he leaves altogether and just says, hey, like, he could. He could.
In that sense, Vrabel could bring. I'm having a mind blank what his name is, but the Titans DC with him. He's done a pretty good job in Tennessee, all things considered.
I wouldn't mind if he's willing to do it. I wouldn't mind. I mean, I know we're kind of going off the rails here. I wouldn't mind if that's the move. If Mayo walks and we have to find a defensive coordinator, I wouldn't mind bringing in Wink Martindale. He's been very good year in and year out for Baltimore. Their defense is always good every year.
Well, he was just
the
in New
Giants
York.
DC.
Well, I know that but he's with.
Yeah.
Sorry,
he's a good defensive guy.
He was with the Ravens for a long time. I know he was with the Giants for 2. Was he hired when Dable
got hired?
Yeah. Dable brought him in 2 years ago, right? So
yeah.
But like the Ravens always had a good defense with him. I don't know, if he would come here, I wouldn't mind that. Offensive coordinator. I don't know what his contract is, but I can't. Unless Bill won't work under Mike Vrabel, O'Brien obviously. Unless O'Brien won't work under Mike Vrabel, nobody else would be the offensive coordinator besides him.
I'd love to keep Bill O'Brien. I've said it multiple times. The only reason I say other people's names is if we move off of him. I'd love to keep.
I'm fine with. I'm fine with it. O'Brien was not the issue this year. Not even close.
People are saying fire Bill O'Brien. Did you see what he had to work with?
Yeah, not even.
He was coaching a high school offense.
He's not the issue. I would be fine with it, but
and had no control over his staff.
Yeah, let's transition though. I want to talk a little bit of Celtics, and then we can finish up with Red Sox and a little bit of that breaking news you mentioned earlier. But the Boston Celtics played a game last night that created some headlines. Jason Tatum was out. Jaylen Brown put on a show for the Celtics. He carried them. I want to say he dropped 40 points, something like that.
40 even. Yep.
He was excellent. But in the final minutes, he dribbled, went up to take a shot. Buddy Hield came from behind, hit the back of his head, then hit the ball, or whether it happened at the same time, simultaneously. They called it a foul, reviewed it, and somehow managed to overturn the call. I know you guys both saw it. What are your thoughts on the call itself? And then obviously there was also a Porzingis ticky-tack call literally right after that. This both happened in the final minute or so of the game. What are your thoughts on the final ending of that Celtics game last night and just everything that came from that?
So I missed the Porzingis one. There was I was hanging out with a buddy of mine watching the College Football National Championship. And so I didn't happen to see the game. We were flipping back and forth between them and the Bees. Great Bees game last night. Terrible way to end it, but great game nonetheless. So I didn't see the Porzingis one. I understand that I don't know who came out and said it. Somebody had said that they basically admitted that they should not have been given free throws on the Porzingis call. The Jaylen Brown one is tough because it's really close. If you really slow down the replay, and it's like you'd have to look at it frame by frame, which is why I think it's kind of ticky-tack that it got overturned. In my opinion, it looks like his hand hits the ball like a millisecond before his forearm hits Brown in the back of the head. And the reason it gets overturned because it was ball then body, it's not technically a foul. Because if he hit body then ball, foul, right? So I can understand, but if you got to look at it frame by frame, I think you just stay with the call on the floor. I get that by the letter of the law, it's technically not a foul, but when you have to look at it frame by frame and be like, oh yeah, his hand is on the ball and there's a paper thin gap between the forearm and Jaylen Brown's head, so no, we have no foul. It's just a play on. That to me is it's so close. You just you have to go with the call on the floor. So I thought
their argument in the report after is that the contact to his head occurred simultaneously and incidental. They said it was incidental contact, and that refs can view that as not a foul. And so I'm like, all right, so if I accidentally bump into you while you're going up for a shot every time, if it's an accident, is it not a foul?
Yeah, that I didn't hear the verbiage. That doesn't make any sense. I had heard today because I didn't hear at first when I watched the video because I saw you post on X last night. At first I looked at it and I was like, I didn't even see that he had hit Jaylen Brown in the back of the head. I just saw a hand on the ball, figuring, oh, like he must have slapped him in the hand. I didn't even notice the forearm to the back of the head. But
So
what I had heard today on the radio was that the overturn was because they had ruled that his hand hit the ball first, not and that the contact of Jaylen Brown's head was afterwards.
yeah, so the comment from the ref says, on replay review, the coach's challenge of the shooting foul called unhealed was deemed successful. The video clearly shows that Healed reaches forward and makes contact with the ball from behind Jaylen Brown. While in contact with the ball, Healed also makes minimal contact with Brown's head, and on review, that contact was correctly deemed incidental. As the rulebook makes clear, the mere fact that contact occurs does not necessarily constitute a foul. Contact with which is incidental to an effort by a player to defend an opponent. So if you accidentally make contact while trying to defend, which is every single foul ever.
Like if I try to reach in and knock the ball away and I slap your hand, that's obviously incidental contact.
Yeah.
But it's still a reach-in foul.
So effort by a player to defend an opponent, reach a loose ball, or perform a normal defensive or offensive movement is not considered illegal. Play resumed with Indiana's possession since Nesmith, whatever his name is, had immediate possession. On top of that, Porzingis was charging the boards, and the whistle blew, and he stopped going for the ball because the whistle blew as the ball was going up. And so they gave the ball to Nesmith because he got the rebound, even though Porzingis would have probably reached up over him and just snagged it away from him. But that's a whole other topic. I just don't know how
you can't
possibly overturn it.
Yeah, I mean, I see why, because by the letter of the rule, he didn't technically commit a foul. But if you have to go frame by frame and it's that close, it's kind of like how the NFL looks at it and says, if it's not clear and obvious, you stay with the call on the field.
That's how it's supposed to be.
That's how it's supposed to be. Like, if there's no clear and obvious, it's not like he hits the ball and then on the way down, he like smacks Brown upside the head and there's obvious contact where you can say, no, he actually fouled him and it's clear and obvious. Where this wasn't clear and obvious, and maybe that's not something in the NBA that they do. Maybe they don't have a clear and obvious thing like the NFL does.
They do. It has to be clear that
clear and obvious.
Play was wrong. Yeah,
but does the NBA actually follow that rule, or do they look at it and say, we can see frame by frame that he went it was ball then contact and we have no foul.
They have to go. They look at it in whether it's frame by frame or not. It has to be clear that there was not a foul if you're going to reverse it or vice versa. The fact is, he hit him on the head. Like that. Like you can try to play he hit the ball a millisecond before whatever. He hit Jaylen Brown on the head.
But the order matters. Because say there was harder and more clear contact, if I hit the ball and then I hit you, it's no foul because I hit the ball first. The contact after making a block. So it's like if you block a shot and then you hit somebody on the way down, unless it's like flagrant quality contact, there's no foul because you hit the ball first. So then all bets are off. So that's part of the overturn, is because they ruled ball was touched first, the contact becomes null and void because it's minimal. It's not flagrant worthy contact.
It was basically simultaneously that's where I'm just like,
it was close.
He got hit in the head. Brown still fully got the shot off. It's not like he blocked him and the ball went out or something like that. Brown still fully got the shot off. The only thing Heel did to really disrupt that shot is hit him in the head. His contact with the ball basically did nothing, but hitting him in the head was clear and obvious, just as much as tapping the ball a millisecond before. It's just blasphemous to me that not so much like that whether it was right or wrong call, that they overturned it. Like you said, it's supposed to be clear and obvious, and it's very much not clear and obvious.
Right, but and the tough part with that is clear and obvious is subjective, because what might be clear and obvious to one person isn't clear and obvious to somebody else, unless it's like blatantly obvious, right? Like somebody might look at it and say, I mean, there were pictures all over the internet after, like, and I know we're kind of, side tangent here. There were pictures all over the internet out, like, within days after, like, when the Pats beat the Falcons in Super Bowl 51 on the walk-off. They were pictures where somebody would, like, circle the ball and circle his knee and be like, look, his knee's down, the ball is not over the goal line. So, like, on really close plays, somebody who might say, oh yeah, it's clearly obvious that he hit the ball first, somebody else might, like you, would say that's too close. It's you can't obviously tell that there was contact to the ball prior to contact to the head. That's the tricky part about clear and obvious in this case, which, again, bringing it back full circle, I think that's too close to overturn the call on the floor.
Correct. And so the report, the last 2-minute report that they released on the calls also said that they admitted that Porzingis's call on the final shot was deemed incorrect. So not only did they quite literally handed Indiana the game from that shot that on Brown that probably should have stayed a foul, which would have gave him 2 shots. They then turned and called a foul with 0.6 seconds left that they admitted that they got wrong and gave Indiana the game in what would have been a tie game. So it should have been really 131 with Brown with 2 shots. And instead, they took that away and then gave 2 shots to the Pacers with 0.6 seconds left and ended the game. It's just blasphemous. But let's move on. We'll finish up with the Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox have done absolutely nothing since the last time we discussed this team. Tonight, just moments ago, Imanaga signed with the Chicago Cubs. I don't think the details are out just yet. I don't see the details out at the moment. But he is seemingly heading to Chicago pending a physical.
Here it is. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, that was the rumored contract. It just says that Bob Nightingale reported it, but the deal is pending a physical. The deadline is 5 p.m. Thursday to officially sign. Otherwise, he goes back to Japan. But then it goes down and says, I saw 5 years, $85 million, but that was their projected contract for him, not an actual report. My guess is that when they complete the physical, it'll probably happen tomorrow morning. They'll do the physical, and then we'll find out probably tomorrow morning what his contract offer is.
I would imagine we'll find out even later tonight. But regardless, he is now off the board. That leaves, obviously, there's the 2 big fish in Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery. They are seemingly not going to be considerations for the Red Sox based off kind of all the reports. I'm hoping we're wrong. But right now, this seems like the most likely path for the Red Sox is they want to cut more payroll. I think that they should trade Kenley Jansen. They need a right-handed bat. They need at least one more pitcher, and that pitcher needs to be a top 2 guy pretty significantly. They need a first baseman option, right-handed guy. What are your overall thoughts? And then JR, you can go up right after him of where things currently stand, and what are your updated hopefuls, being realistic with all the reports of what you're looking for the team to do.
So it's hard to really be hopeful with a plan. Obviously they signed Giolito a couple weeks ago. They still need another frontline starter. I've kind of thrown my hands in the air. I really don't know what they're going to do. There was a report that came out within the last few days that essentially the Red Sox are not making offers to free agents that are more than 2 years in length, which is mind-boggling to me. I don't really understand the thought process, because let's just pretend, right, that they can get, Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery on a 2-year deal. Well, 2 years from now, when possibly your top 3 prospects are major league players, none of them are starting pitchers. And at that point, based on the current roster, like, you basically only have Brian Bayo. You would have no established pitching under contract anywhere. So I don't love the idea um, behind passing on certain guys on lengthy contracts. Um, I, it just doesn't make sense to me. Especially for, I know when we talked about Breslow as a candidate, and then when they signed him as the chief baseball officer, that we kind of felt a little bit optimistic, because his primary focus when he was with the Cubs was pitching. He was the director of pitching. Then he moved on up through the organization, but still remained within, with deep ties to the pitching staff. So I get that, things have come out with how the front office, not the front office, but like how ownership wants to run the team, that, Breslow to some degree is probably handcuffed. It came out obviously with Heimblum working on a budget of, what was it, 225 million during the 2023 season. And that wasn't just like, hey, go into day one with this budget. Like, he wasn't allowed to exceed that dollar figure throughout the entire season. So that really handcuffed his ability to make trades, because he couldn't go over that by even adding guys to try and win. So you assume that Breslow's operating under certain circumstances. It's disappointing that, they're probably not going to land, any of the top line starters, unless, Blake Snell doesn't get what he wants out west, and he's like, yeah, like, I'll take a 2-year deal, come back to the American League East. So I would imagine you're probably going to see, they're probably going to get like James Paxton, Marcus Stroman, something like that. I don't know, maybe like Jorge Soler. Like, those are the guys that you're going to hear about in the next 30 days, because pitchers and catchers report in mid-February. So 30 days from now,
Truck Day's 25 days away.
So you're going to see, within the next 30 days, the names that you're going to see scroll across your TV, your phone, whatever, about signings are going to be the James Paxtons, Marcus Stromans, and Jorge Solers of the world. Obviously they didn't go get Teoscar Hernandez, because the Dodgers gave him like granted it's a 1-year deal, but the 1-year salary is a lot higher than he was going to get on an average annual basis anywhere else. So they had to pivot off of that. But like, I don't know what to think. Like, I would expect them to go get guys like Stroman and Paxton, and who's the guy that I just mentioned, Jorge Soler. But like, I can't say with any confidence that will happen. Though I think those are the quote unquote quality of the players that you're going to get. But I have no confidence in any particular player being a guy that they bring in. We all thought that they were going to be, that they were legitimately going to be in on Yamamoto. We haven't heard any information on what their offer was. Seemingly, it was well below. It was well below market value for him. They don't, and now that they're saying that they don't want to go more than 2 years on anybody. So that automatically eliminates, the second tier of pitching. It's just like, we were all feeling great that they would go do that, and it's frustrating that they're not.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty likely. Go ahead, JR.
Oh, I was just gonna add on. They said we were going full throttle. They just didn't say what direction.
Yeah, they threw it in reverse and slammed on the gas pedal. We didn't realize it was going to be full throttle, 30 miles an hour backwards.
Yeah. I think at this point, if you see a big pitcher come to Boston, and by high quality pitcher, it's going to be via trade. I don't expect Snell or Montgomery. Basically, what they're dealing with is this: I think they're at 201 for their salary. If they want to stay under 225, which is what they were last year, Cotillo and McAdam both said that he doesn't expect them to come really any bit close to the tax, which is 237. So let's just say I think 22-25 is probably a realistic, ballpark of where the budget is. I'm not going to waste breath screaming about that concept that there's a budget for the Boston Red Sox and it's below the tax, but so we'll just skip by that. But if they're at 201 right now and they need another pitcher and they need a right-handed bat, they need a backup first baseman, and they need probably ideally another left-handed bullpen arm. They almost have to move Kenley Jansen. And they could do that via trading him for just a prospect or two to dump his salary. They could do something like I proposed yesterday, which was send him in a three-way deal to LA that returned a young guy that's on the border of major leagues in Gavin Stone, and three-way deal with the White Sox that got Eloy Jimenez to Boston. That would seemingly fill the right-handed bat need and also give them another pitching option to the mix. They would still need a top guy, but it would give them another pitching option, and it would be trading away a strength, which is the bullpen. And I still think that could be a pretty good bullpen without Jansen, and they would fill a different need with basically a wash. If they do that, and you can bypass the trade. If they just dump Jansen's money and sign Soler instead of the trade, you would still be theoretically doing close to the same thing. But I think they need, if they want to fill with a quality right-handed bat, which is what they need, and they want to fill and get a top pitcher, it's almost going to have to, and fill the other two needs as well. It's almost have to going to be via trading Jansen and dumping ideally at least 10 to 12 million of his 16 salary. I think you could almost certainly do that. I don't know. I heard today McAdams say the Marlins are a little hesitant getting cold feet and moving Luzardo. The price for Dylan Cease seems to be through the roof. I would still keep an eye out in Seattle. I don't think that they're done. I think that they're still going to be considering, so I wouldn't rule them out. But I mean, the pitching market trade-wise is shaky and unknown right now. So unless it's going to be someone that we don't know, I know Valdez in Houston was mentioned at one point, or I know we've talked about Shane Bieber and Tristan McKenzie and a few other names, but if they're going to add a meaningful pitcher, it seems to be because of ownership's lack of commitment that it's going to have to be via trade.
Yeah, I agree. And what's difficult, and I get that the guys that are in the farm are not Breslow's guys because he wasn't here. I would guess that the likelihood that one of the top three guys gets moved is almost zero. Just given the idea that, obviously, Heimblum did a good job of building the farm. Again, certainly isn't hard to get better when you're one of the bottom farm systems, but he did bring in good players. He did that job very well. My guess is because those guys are here that, if he's operating under a budget constraint, is it likely? No, but I wouldn't rule out the idea that ownership is telling Breslow, you can't trade any of our top prospects because I mean, that coupled with, they're not going more than 2 years on free agent contract offers. They're not overspending now. My guess is that they're waiting for that crop of guys to come up, and then maybe, hopefully, maybe Full Throttle is a 3-year plan. It wasn't meant to be a 2024 plan.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you make the words Full Throttle and then.
Well, and not only
they're not even going full throttle. They're not even going half throttle.
They're zero throttle. They're stuck in neutral. But the other thing that was frustrating too is even in his introductory press conference, Breslow basically said, and I forget what his exact words were, but he basically said that that he was told that they were going to spend money this year to put talent on the roster. And whether that was him just blowing smoke because he misinterpreted something that he was told in his job interview process, I don't know, but with everything that they said between Full Throttle and Breslin being like, yeah, like, money, we have a better grasp on money. We'll spend this year. Yeah, they're going to spend, but the inference, the implication was that they were going to go back to, like 20 years ago when they had, top 6 payrolls and they were actually putting real talent on the field and putting butts in seats at Fenway, which I think is going to be very hard to do this year because if there's no talent on the field, people are not going to want to go to the game. You're going to see half empty stadium, and it's just a frustrating concept that seemingly all we got was lip service when Breslin, and I'm not going to sit here and say it's Breslin's fault. Maybe they told him, yeah, like, we're going to spend money. It's going to be different. We want it to be different under you than it was under Bloom for the last 4 years. Like maybe they just, they gave him lip service. And then as soon as he accepted the deal, signed a contract, they're like, hey, like we've had a change of heart. We kind of want to keep the status quo. You can't spend more than this amount of money. And, you can't trade our top prospects.
I wouldn't be shocked if he's also doing that. I think regardless, it's kind of unlikely that they trade one of those top 3 guys, and they shouldn't unless it's really the right deal. But I don't think they can still add a top pitcher without giving one of those 3 guys up. They would just have to move. I know McAdam and Cotillo both said today that the sense that they've gotten is of the outfielders that they have, that Rafaela has the most value, which basically means just him over Abreu and Durant.
Yeah, I would say that the value on the market is highest with Rafaela.
Yeah, so I think like Rafaela trading him, whether it's trading Houck, I have a lot of belief in Cutter Crawford, but like if it would get you an ace and he needs to be part of the package, then
you're not getting an ace. You're not getting an ace with Cutter Crawford in the package.
Well, I'm saying as part. Like if it was Rafaela, Cutter Crawford, and something else, like you know what I mean.
My personal opinion, Cutter Crawford is like a throw-in in a trade.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, he had like a 4.04 ERA last year, and
he also disappeared. He also disappeared in the second half and got gradually worse as the season went on.
Yeah, I mean that's a different. We won't get into.
I just don't think that if you're going to a team looking for a legitimate ace, Cutter Crawford is not a piece that you say he is, the second part of it. Like he's obviously not the main piece in a trade for a top prospect, for a top pitching guy, but like he's like one of the last guys that you put in a trade for a top arm, in my opinion.
I think realistically other teams view him higher than you do. I think a lot of teams see. I mean, he's got control. He's relatively consistent. He can pitch out of the pen and in the rotation, and I think a lot of teams probably see him as an ideal, number 4, number 5 guy. Which not that that's like anything special, but if that being under cheap control for the next 4 or 5 years, it will certainly hold some value, especially if you think he has a little bit more upside and untapped potential. But anyways. It's just basically I think they're going to have to do it via trade if they want a top pitcher because they're not going to spend the money to sign a top pitcher. Yeah. Not that we really love Blake Snell that much anyways, but
no. And just because you brought it up, Cutter Crawford has 5 years of team control left.
Yeah, so
but the difference with that is he's 32 at the end of those 5 years.
Yeah, I mean I think like in a trade realistically like. No one's really looking at Crawford and say, well, what am I going to have in 10 years? You know what I mean? It's like they're worried about the next 3 to 5 years of the player.
Yeah.
Big picture, though, like I think what they're seemingly looking to do is that Breslow has to navigate this fine line of, okay, do I sign Soler, which opens up the door to maybe trade Rafaela, or do I sign? Well, now Imanaga's not there, but like a Paxton, and it opens up the door to trade maybe a Crawford or a Houck or a Pivetta. Like, how are they going to approach it? Do I need to trade Kenley Jansen to open up more space? And so I think he's searching around, finding the best value in free agents. One more piece, well, to start, whether that's Soler or a pitcher or a bullpen arm or whatever. And once he does that, then I think it's going to open up more avenues in the trade market. And I think once Montgomery and Snell and Bellinger and some of these, there's still some big names in the market. They finally sign. The trade market's still pretty much kind of on hold until some of these other big names sign, and teams get a better sense of what they need to now acquire via trade.
Yeah, I mean, pitching wise, like my last little, thing on this is, say they go sign James Paxton, that doesn't open up a spot to move a pitcher, because right now they have 3 guys that are in my rotation worthy arms.
Which is who?
You have Giolito,
Bello,
and Pivetta are really the only 3 that you can say they are sure, as of right now, right? On this roster, those are the only 3 guys on this roster that I would say are sure bets to be in the rotation as of right now. So if you sign James Paxton, now your fifth spot is Cutter Crawford. Do you want to roll the dice and have Tanner Houck be in the back of the rotation? Are they going to experiment and have Garrett Whitlock be a starter again? Even if you sign a James Paxton, you still have a question mark over who your 5th guy is. I think what would open it up is if, say, they go get Paxton and Stroman. Well, now you can, because you have the ability, because you have 5 guys in the rotation. So that allows you to move, Cutter Crawford, Tanner Houck now become more expendable because they're not battling for a 5th spot. They're now the odd guys out for the rotation because they've already got 5 guys that are in the rotation. I think they
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think most specifically what they do with the right-handed bat, what position that's going to be. It seems like they want to go outfield.
I don't think it's Hoskins. As much as I would like Hoskins, I think his bat.
Yeah, he's still my top right-handed bat, but
I think he would absolutely rake at Fenway. I think it's realistically that they want to bring in an outfielder so that they have the flexibility to trade 1 or 2 of the young outfielders to try to go get a pitcher. That would be my, and I'm not,
yeah,
I'm not.
I'm coming around on Soler a bit. His spray chart at Fenway is pretty nice to look at, but
yes,
I'm just worried about his consistency, and I've talked about that on X a lot. Is I'm not sure my big gripe with Soler is I don't know what version of Soler we're going to get. Are we going to get the 22 version or the 23 version, or the first half of the 2021 season version, or the second half of 2021 version? I don't know. But JR, what are your final thoughts before we wrap it up here? And then we'll wrap it up. What's your final kind of Red Sox thoughts here?
Ben basically said everything that I was going to say.
Okay.
Kind of to a T. Other than the fact that you guys are talking about the bat that I've been wanting all offseason, Jorge Soler. Yes, that was my number 1 bat.
Be excited about it.
I hope it happens, and if it doesn't,
he's looking. It got reported today that he's most likely looking at a 2-year deal. So apparently that puts him in the ballpark of the Red Sox. They offered $228 supposedly to Teoscar Hernandez. Maybe that gets it done. 2 years, 28, 2 years, 30 range. Get it done. Whether you could maybe even do a player option.
I do owe Chaim Bloom an apology. After everything that's coming out with the show to Imanaga. All right, yeah, here's your flowers, bro. I owe him an apology. Just reading everything I did about Shota Imanaga and just everything that's happened this offseason and the $225 million budget. I love Craig Breslow. I think he's going to be an awesome GM, but it's going to be hard to do what you can do when you have John Henry and Tom Werner as your owners, who used the last president of baseball operations as a scapegoat to bring in somebody else.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, yeah, we're changing our ways.
Yeah. I mean, I won't go deep into ownership, but basically they put budget restraints on him, and they didn't have any young talent coming up. Like, that was the issue. 2023 was the first year that they had like actual young, cheap talent. So he was like, all right, here's your budget. We have no cheap young talent. The ones that you do flared out, and like Dahlback and Houck wasn't anything, and Duran wasn't anything for the first couple of years. And it was like, here's all these holes. Oh, and trade your superstar outfielder, and now build a contender. But that's besides the point. Let's finish it up there. Ben, JR, any final thoughts of Boston sports?
No, not really. I mean, Patriots season's over, and we'll see what happens there. Red Sox are depressing again. Celtics are really good, even though last night I didn't get to watch the game, but I saw everything that happened later today. Bruins, they're doing fine, but yeah, I mean, now we play the waiting game.
Yep. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of touched on it all. We got playoff football coming up this weekend. Won't get a chance to watch Tyreek in Kansas City because I don't have Peacock. But
you don't have the cock.
I do not. I do not have that.
Ben doesn't like the cock.
No, negative. So good weekend of games. Some cool narratives. Obviously, you have Stafford going back to Detroit. You have Stafford versus Goff. They got traded for each other. McCarthy facing his old team. Just some cool narratives this weekend. Ready for football. But yeah, just keeping an eye out on Pat's off season, and I'm excited. Potentially for what's next. It'll be sad if Bill's gone. It's like the official end of the last 24 years of our lives from a fandom standpoint. But just gearing up for the off season, and hopefully there'll be some cross our fingers that maybe the Red Sox will make another move before they pack up the trucks and drive south.
Yeah, that's basically it for me as well. I'm waiting. I just pray the Red Sox do enough to build a decent baseball team. We'll wait and see if that's the case. But for now, I think that's it. So we'll be back next week. This was hopefully a first time streaming here on this new platform. A little bit more interactive, to say the least. But for now, we'll be back next week. And as usual, let's hope the Red Sox have done something, for we have something Boston Red Sox positive to talk about. Until then, take care and see you next week.